lived in Caracas, Venezuela for 10 years. I love the people, I love the country, and I love my work as a monk teaching and consulting. Then, on February 2, 2016, time stopped. While taking a domestic flight, I was suddenly arrested by Interpol officers. What am I accused of? They said I was accused of plotting to traffic a very large shipment of weapons to India 21 years before. I had absolutely no connection with that crime, but all my efforts to explain my innocence fell on deaf ears. When the Indian government learned of my detention, they said they wanted me extradited, so I was put in a jail cell. My cell phone and laptop computer were taken away, never returned. All my plans, all my commitments, canceled. The cell I was put in was rather crowded. It was 10 feet by 20 feet with 20 men. It smelled like a locker room. When the steel bars closed behind me, I shook hands with all the 20 men. Turned out one was a lawyer. When he heard my case, he said, "This will be many months before you can get out of this one." So I sat on the cement floor, took out my little notepad, made a calendar for 1 year to keep track of the time. I'm a spiritualist. I believe in a higher power that guides the universe and each of us. That first day in the cell, I had a talk with that higher power. Okay, God, you know I'm innocent of this crime I'm accused of. However, you apparently want me to be here. Why? I have no idea. But if this is where you want me to serve, here I am. We lived in that cell around the clock, except we weren't allowed to have any clocks or watches. At night, when we slept on the floor, it was so crowded sometimes I could feel the body of one man on one side and the other man on the other side. Very quickly, I contracted scabies, which is a contagious parasite that burrows into the skin, lays its eggs, and is terribly itchy. I was itchy the whole time I was there. Prisoners were in for all sorts of crimes. Listening to their stories, I think maybe 10% were innocent like I was. One time I noticed that the 3 prisoners sleeping all around me were 2 men and 1 transgender person. They were all murderers. Each one claimed that they were innocent, not guilty, but each one admitted they had actually done it. I was not allowed to make phone calls or write letters or receive any letters. I had no contact with my friends except during the weekly visits, which were timed by the guards to last exactly 5 minutes. Then began another 7 days and nights waiting for my 5 minutes of bliss. About once a month, I was put in handcuffs and taken outside and put in a van to the courthouse for a hearing. It was a lovely reprieve to look through the barred windows at the colorful city I knew so well. Thousands of people, street vendors, chaotic drivers, everyone moving and behaving normally. The handcuffs on my wrists reminded me of 12 million men, women, and children who were kidnapped in Africa and transported in heavy chains to the New World as slaves. All of them innocent. No food is served in the Caracas jail. I survived because every morning one of my faithful friends cooked a vegetarian meal for me, brought it with drinking water across town, and delivered the bag with my name on it at the jail entrance. Sadly, I could never see them or thank them. At 10 a.m., the guards passed the food bags to us through the bars. Some prisoners had no family or friends in Caracas, but nobody went hungry because those of us who had food shared some of it with those who didn't. I lost a lot of weight because I gave almost half of my food away every day. I had other wonderful friends far away. In this country, in South America, in Europe, friends raised more than 100 friends raised the money for my lawyers. But I never could see them because they wouldn't let me get any letters. They were afraid that if the guards found them, somehow I'd get in trouble. I thought I was in plenty of trouble as it was. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." I was determined from the first day to be a survivor and to come through this ordeal stronger physically, mentally, and spiritually. I exercised every day. I practiced up to 2 hours of yoga asanas in the tiny space where I was. I have a Brazilian friend, Frei Beto. He's a Catholic monk and a very famous writer, written more than 70 books in Brazil. He was tortured and imprisoned for 4 years during the Brazilian military dictatorship. When he heard I was in jail in Venezuela, he sent me a book he had just written, Finding Happiness in Adversity. That was a great solace to me because I knew he knew from personal experience what kind of ordeal I was going through. My meditation gave me strength. I meditated 4 times a day, as I always do. Usually it was very noisy, but the best time was around 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd wake up when the lights are off, TV's off, everyone's sleeping or at least quiet. I would sit still in the silence for 3 hours and focus on what is beyond all time, universal love. There was a moment, though, I'd been in jail about a few weeks, when I started to feel sorry for myself. I was writing in my journal, and I started a sentence saying how terrible things were and how unhappy I felt. But before I could finish the sentence, a prisoner who was playing cards on the other side of the cell suddenly shouted out, "Hey, Dada, everything okay? ¿Estás bien?" I looked up at him. He smiled, went back to his card game. He had no idea what I was thinking. But I think there was a higher power who knew exactly what I was thinking and wanted to tell me, this is not what this is about. You're not there. You're there for a spiritual retreat. You're there for your progress. It was a spiritual retreat, though not a very pleasant one, I'll admit that. The Caracas jail, like most prisons in the world, it's a terrible place. It's designed to dehumanize prisoners, making them powerless and helpless. Many suffer depression or anger. Yet to vent anger at the guards is suicidal. So anger and fights sometimes burst out between prisoners. I hope that I was a good companion to my fellow inmates. After 7.5 months, I was released into the custody of immigration officers because they said my 1-year visa had expired while I was in prison. So I spent another 2 months in the immigration detention center. It was more comfortable. Everyone had a bunk bed. There was a little space to walk around, and we were fed 3 small meals a day. But we were still 30 men locked in a large basement cell with 10 women in the next cell. And the crime that every one of us had committed was we had been born in the wrong country, which is the same as 36,000 people in this country who are held in immigration detention centers called ICE. In November 2016, after 9.5 months, I was escorted to the Caracas airport and put on a plane to be deported back to the United States. The ordeal was over. I remembered the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who was sent to Auschwitz concentration camp, where his whole family was murdered. He wrote, after the war, the book Man's Search for Meaning. He said, the one thing you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedom, he said, is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. I agree. I think that suffering is a state of mind. Frankly, I still wonder about that experience. I think my meditation practice gave me the strength and the will to resist depression and view my detention as a spiritual test and a retreat. I believe it helped me learn 3 things a little better: patience, humility, and surrender. I think very painful experiences can be opportunities for growth. Thank you.